Africa has seen a lot of changes. For a long time it dealt with colonialism being taken advantage of and conflicts within its own borders. But now, something new is happening all over Africa, from the busy streets of Abidjan to the sunny plains of Senegal. People are speaking up, demanding that Western militaries leave. This isn't just about countries changing sides, it's about Africa changing its relationship with the rest of the world. Africans are tired of being seen as helpless and needing Western intervention. New leaders and citizens want to decide their own future. This won't be easy. When Western troops leave, it creates instability that other groups might try to take advantage of. There are a lot of challenges ahead and the future is uncertain. But even with these challenges, there's a sense of hope, a belief that this change could lead to better things. The old ways are disappearing and a new Africa is emerging, one that wants its rightful place in the world. This is a risky but important time, a time when decisions made today will affect generations to come. For many years, France has kept a lot of soldiers in its former African colonies. It's a reminder of its past that makes its relationship with Africa complicated. But now, many countries are telling French troops to leave, and France has to face the fact that its influence in Africa is changing. When French troops left Ivory Coast, Senegal, Mali, and Burkina Faso, it wasn't just a change of plans. It shows that things are shifting. For years, many Africans have felt that France treats them like colonies again and doesn't really help them. This has led to protests and unrest. Because of this, France has a new plan for its military in Africa. Instead of always having soldiers there, they'll send them for shorter periods, mainly to train African forces and fight terrorism. This suggests that France realizes that direct military action isn't the best way anymore. Now, they want to work together with African countries and help them become stronger, but not everyone believes them. Many African leaders and citizens think this is just a new name for the same old policies, a small change that doesn't address the real problems of exploitation. The real test for France is to show with actions, not just words, that they want a fairer relationship with Africa. France leaving presents both problems and opportunities. It creates a void that other countries might try to fill, but it also gives African nations a chance to take charge of their own safety and form new partnerships based on respect and shared goals. To understand why so many Africans are unhappy with France, we have to look back at history. Colonialism, with its cruelty and destruction of African societies, still affects the continent. For many Africans, French troops being there reminds them of this painful past and the unequal power dynamics that continue to impact their lives. Many believe that France benefits from its former colonies by taking resources and having too much control, which creates resentment and distrust. Furthermore, there's a growing feeling that France's military actions, often done in the name of fighting terrorism, haven't always helped the countries involved. The complicated relationships and rivalries in the Sahel region, along with the presence of foreign forces, have often made conflicts worse instead of better. The recent expulsions are the result of these historical grievances and current frustrations. They show that Africans reject the controlling relationship they've had with France. They want respect and a genuine partnership. Moving forward, France needs to fundamentally rethink its relationship with its former colonies, building it on mutual respect, shared responsibility, and a true commitment to addressing past injustices that still affect the present. This is the only way to heal old wounds and create a new chapter of cooperation and understanding. Ivory Coast and Senegal's decisions to ask French troops to leave are strong symbols of the changing relationship between France and its former African colonies. These two countries, once important for French influence in West Africa, are now leading a continent-wide movement for independence and new partnerships. In Ivory Coast, ending France's long military presence shows a clear break from the past. The country, still dealing with the aftermath of a civil war where France's role was controversial, wants to be independent and make its own choices. Similarly, Senegal closing foreign military bases, including those used by France, shows they want to move past old ways of working together on security. Senegal, a model of democracy and stability in the region, wants to be a bridge between Africa and the rest of the world, building partnerships based on mutual benefit and a shared vision for the future. These decisions are serious and come with risks, especially in a region facing growing extremism and instability. But for the leaders of Ivory Coast and Senegal, the potential benefits of being more independent outweigh the risks. What's happening in Ivory Coast and Senegal is not unique. It's part of a larger trend across Africa, as nations assert themselves and want to redefine their relationships with former colonial powers. These changes will have a big impact on Africa's future and the balance of power in the world. As Western powers, especially France, become less influential in Africa, new countries like Russia, China, and Turkey are stepping in. These nations see a chance to increase their own power and are actively trying to befriend African leaders, offering different ways to work together. Russia wants to be a major global power again, and has become very active in providing security. However, the presence of Russian mercenaries, particularly the Wagner Group, in countries like Mali and the Central African Republic, has raised concerns about human rights violations and the possibility of making conflicts worse. China, on the other hand, is focused on the economy. They're investing billions of dollars in building roads, bridges, and other infrastructure in Africa through their Belt and Road Initiative. While many African countries appreciate this investment, some worry that it will make them overly dependent on China. Turkey is also becoming more involved in Africa, especially in the Sahel region. They are providing military aid and training, and because of their cultural and religious connections to some African countries, they have been able to establish a presence in the changing political landscape of the continent. The involvement of these new players makes a complicated situation even more complex. African nations, caught in the middle, have to carefully manage these competing interests, making sure that any new partnerships benefit them and don't threaten their long-term stability and independence. When Western troops left several African countries, it created a lack of security that extremist groups are now taking advantage of. From the Sahel to the Horn of Africa, these groups are using the instability and weak governments to grow stronger, recruit more members, and launch bigger attacks. The Sahel region in particular has become a center for terrorism, with groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS gaining power and carrying out deadly attacks on both civilians and security forces. Conflicts between different communities, climate change, and weak governments make the situation even more complicated, creating an environment where extremism can thrive. For example, when French troops left Mali, there was a surge in violence, making people worry that the country could become a safe haven for terrorists. Similarly, the situation in Burkina Faso is also dangerous, with extremist groups increasingly targeting civilians and challenging the government's authority. The world cannot ignore the growing threat of extremism in Africa. The void left by departing Western troops must be filled, not by mercenaries or foreign powers with their own agendas, but by strong regional security measures and a renewed focus on addressing the root causes of instability, such as poverty, inequality, and lack of opportunity. The stakes are high. If we don't address the security challenges in Africa, it will have terrible consequences not only for the continent, but also for the rest of the world, leading to more migration, terrorism, and instability beyond Africa's borders. For too long, powerful countries have made decisions about Africa's future, often treating it as a pawn in their games of power. During the Cold War, Africa became a battleground for the United States and the Soviet Union, with African countries often caught in the middle. When the Cold War ended, people hoped for a new era of cooperation built on respect and shared goals. However, old habits die hard, and Africa once again found itself at the center of a global power struggle, this time between the West and rising powers like China and Russia. However, the current situation presents a chance for Africa to break free from this cycle of being controlled by others and assert its own independence on the world stage. While the withdrawal of Western troops creates challenges, it also allows African nations to take more control of their own destiny and form new partnerships on their own terms. To achieve this, African countries need to prioritize working together and integrating their economies and policies. They need to strengthen institutions like the African Union and collaborate to address common problems like security, development, and climate change. They should also diversify their economic and political relationships, reducing their reliance on any single power and using their collective strength to secure the best possible outcomes for their citizens. Africa's future will not be determined by powerful countries outside its borders, but by the actions of Africans themselves. By embracing unity, strategic partnerships, and good governance, African nations can transform the continent from a pawn in a geopolitical game into a leading player shaping the future of the world. While the news focuses on the political effects of Western troops leaving Africa, we can't forget about the human cost of these global power shifts. Behind the maps and statistics are stories of ordinary people whose lives are directly affected by these changes, often in significant and lasting ways. In countries dealing with insecurity and conflict, it's often civilians who suffer the most. For example, the rise of extremism in the Sahel has led to more attacks on villages, schools and markets, forcing millions of people to flee their homes and creating a climate of fear. Furthermore, the economic consequences of instability and conflict can be devastating, leading to more poverty, hunger and displacement. The lack of basic services such as healthcare and education makes these problems even worse, trapping communities in a cycle of poverty. It's crucial that we listen to and consider the voices and experiences of those most affected by these geopolitical shifts. International actors must prioritize the safety of civilians, ensuring that aid reaches those in need, and that efforts to address the root causes of conflict include and respond to the needs of local communities. The pursuit of geopolitical interests should never come at the expense of human lives. A fairer and more just world requires a commitment to peace, security, and development that puts people first. The withdrawal of Western troops from Africa is a historic moment, a turning point that presents both challenges and opportunities. While the path ahead is uncertain, one thing is clear. Africa's future will be decided by Africans themselves. This is a time for strong leadership, new ideas, and a renewed commitment to Pan-Africanism. African nations must seize this opportunity to break free from the past, to move beyond dependency and exploitation, and to create a future of peace, prosperity, and self-reliance. This means investing in education, healthcare, and infrastructure, empowering young people and women, and encouraging innovation and entrepreneurship. It also means strengthening democratic institutions, promoting good governance, and upholding the rule of law. The international community must abandon outdated ideas of control and embrace a new era of partnership based on mutual respect, shared responsibility, and a genuine commitment to supporting African-led solutions to African challenges. The journey ahead will not be easy. It will require courage, determination, and a willingness to embrace change. But the potential rewards are immense. By working together, African nations can build a brighter future for themselves and for future generations. A future where Africa takes its rightful place as an equal and respected partner in the world.